Okay, so we're coming up on the end of the year, and so today we are gonna tackle the project that I have been avoiding all year long, my studio. Now, it may look okay from here, that's by design, but ultimately this room has been so packed with clutter and disorganization and problems that I never come in here except to film and to sew if I have to. Renovation projects in here have been left unfinished for over 2 years. Various projects and materials for things I've made this year have been piling up in here. So I've waited long enough, we need to address this. So today we're gonna be putting things back where they go, trying to get organized, finishing the tile on the fireplace in this room, hopefully fixing the unsightly insulation on the inside of the fireplace, and then exploring some new layout options. So lots to do today, let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Reissued. If you're new here, my name is Andrew. Now, this studio makeover was a highlight of my channel over 2 years ago. I had a series of videos. We were knocking out the ceiling, painting the walls, adding the French cleat wall system, making the desk, and then everything kind of came grinding to a halt. I know that we want to paint the floor in this room, which just feels like such a massive undertaking because there's so much in this room now, and so everything would have to come out and stay out long enough for the floor to cure. So I've just been putting that off, and by extension, it means that I'm putting everything else off in this room, so it's just become a dumping ground for everything. Now, as we head into 2026, this is gonna be a project that gets pushed to the top. I want to be able to actually create in this space. You may have noticed, like over the last 6 months, I mostly do projects in my kitchen because that room stays pretty clean and is organized and beautiful and not a disaster like this room. So I want this room, if this is gonna be the studio, the place where we create together on the channel, we need this to be functional, we need this to be beautiful, and I actually need to be shooting projects in this room. However, having some time away from this room, I am gonna go back to the drawing board on a couple of things that have not been working out with the table in here, with the desk in here. I just find that I was thinking more aesthetically and not as practically as I needed to be at the time, or just trying to make whatever I had work. So we're gonna revisit some of those things more thoroughly starting next year, but for today, my goal is just to get this cleared out, to get it usable, and to start exploring some of those new ideas. Speaking of projects coming up in the new year, I'm really hoping to get some outdoor projects going with a little shed makeover and maybe some gardening. Part of that is inspired by the kitchen gardening course that I've been taking on Craftsy, which is the sponsor of today's video. Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative with classes in art, sewing, cooking, baking, and so much more. In the past, I used Craftsy to pick up some tips on upholstery that I used for the infamous leather chair. And in general, I just find their video courses to not only be informative and educational, but also very cozy and relaxing, perfect for this time of year. The course I'm taking right now is Designing Elegant Edible Gardens by Ellen Ecker Ogden, and she's talking us through garden design tips and layout options. The designs and images that she references are honestly so beautiful. I've been looking for other reference images on my own, and I'm not coming up with anything as amazing as what she has. I'm wanting to add a 4-square garden like this in the lower part of my backyard, and she's getting me excited about gardening not only as a hobby or as a way to make food, but also as like a design element outside. I'm really excited about that. Craftsy teaches through instructional videos taught by professional instructors who give step-by-step demonstrations and share their personal knowledge and experiences. Ellen's backyard took her 10 years to complete, so I hope you're ready for a lot of gardening content here on the channel. So right now, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get your first full year of Craftsy Premium for only $1.49, for new members only. Get your New Year's projects goals started early and get learning with Craftsy. Okay, let's get started with this mini makeover. Now, this room is a total disaster, mostly because there's just way too much crap in here. So the first thing that we need to do here is just go through and put some stuff away. Now, I tend to feel overwhelmed during a process like this because there are a lot of things that don't have a place to go. So I just think, wow, I can't really do much here. I don't have a place for these things. But the reality is that a lot of these things do have a place that they go. So I challenged myself to just start here by putting things back where they go. I could put away my sewing machine and my sewing materials. I could put some of my newer fabrics away. I have a bunch of bolts on these hooks on the French cleat wall, and I needed to pull everything down to reorganize, but both to restabilize these pieces because they were looking a little sketchy. So my parents helped me take everything down and repair those and then get those back up in place with the newer bolts as well. I've also been hanging some other fabrics over this ladder. There's not a lot of direct sun here, so I'm not too worried about sun bleaching, and I think it looks kind of nice and gets these out of the way but still accessible. We will continue this clearing out process later on, but for now, I think we need to get started on the fireplace. There's gonna be a lot of steps here and they all have different dry times, so I think we should get started. Now, as I mentioned, we started tiling this fireplace 2 years ago when we were really active in the studio makeover, and we ended up stopping because we weren't quite sure how to finish the hearth. There was a part up under the grate here that was really uneven, so that just needed some problem solving. My dad went in off camera and cut a piece of cement board to go in there. It's not completely flat, but it does give us a flat surface to be able to cut one solid piece of the kitchen tile to lay in here across the back. So now I can go ahead and lay out all the pieces that will go on the hearth here, mix up my mortar, and get started with the tiling process. I love this tile so much. I got this at the REISSUED store. I think this was $10 a box and I got 3 boxes. This tile usually retails for, I remember like $26 a square foot, so this was an absolute steal. The white tiles are marble and the black tiles are glass, so this is super high quality. I love the graphic black and white pattern. I kind of have that as a motif going around my house, so I'm so excited to finally be finishing this up on the hearth. As usual, I'm laying the tiles while my dad makes the cuts. To finish off the little hearth shelf thing with the kitchen tile, he mitered the edges here, which is really tough to do. This narrow tile actually broke into 2 pieces, but I think it's gonna be just fine to go in there and create a nice clean edge along the front rather than seeing the exposed edge of the tile. So now I can lay that in with my mortar and shim it up a bit to get the best joint on that mitered edge. There was a little gap under the metal insert, so my dad cut these little tiny tiles, that same kitchen tile, to go up underneath. The idea here is that I want to build this up to look like a continuation of that metal grate. So I'm going to press these tiles in there now and then go back later with caulk and grout and paint to make this feel like a continuation of that metal grate insert. While this is drying, I wanted to go ahead and get started on repairing the inside here. Now you can see there was a bunch of insulation stuffed up in here and sprayed in here, and it's not looking great. I know that all of the chimneys in my house are really crumbly, so I think this was missing bricks and there was probably a draft and possibly some critters coming down. So I'm okay with this being sealed up entirely, but it looks like crap, so we gotta fix that. So my first step here was just to go in and vacuum out any dust or debris that had fallen in here, just to give us a nice clean base to work with. Then we were gonna go in with some spray foam insulation that we already had. We weren't really sure how old it was, and it turns out it was very old, so it was just barely leaking out here. So let's press pause on this for now while we get a new can of spray foam. Okay, so this was totally unplanned, but as I was tiling the fireplace the other day, I had a revelation. I guess that remains to be seen. This may totally not work. But one of my biggest issues with this room is that I have this whole little desk area here that was intended to allow me to work with my external monitor when I edit. It's neatly hidden behind this beautiful little screen. It looks great, but I can count on one hand the number of times that I've actually sat here to edit in 2 years. So this just feels like a waste of space, a place where things get piled up, and I feel like this needs to change somehow. I just wasn't sure how. One of the big issues here that I didn't really think would be an issue, but I do find to be an issue, is that I don't like sitting and facing the wall. Like, I don't know, I just feel like I'm sitting here, I'm just looking at the wall, I can't really look out a window. It also feels like this whole channel right here is kind of like a big hallway. It feels like everything is too lined up and there's no like coziness or warmth or like kind of cocoonness that I want to feel when I edit. So I had the thought, what if we turn the desk 90 degrees, lay like so that I would sit here and look out into the space. I think that maybe the obvious choice would be to have it face the window, but I think that actually it feels more comfortable to sit right here and to be open to the rest of the house versus feeling closed off. Additionally, this is gonna be pretty easy to try because this piece is just up on the wall, so it's not actually attached to the bottom at all. So I should be able to just rotate the desk here and check it out and see if that works. So yeah, I'm not sure how this will affect everything else, but I'm kind of dying to try this and see if this is like the breakthrough that I'm feeling that it is. Let's do it. Okay, so this is one of those times where I am 100% asking you to use your imagination here because there are many things that are not working. However, it's also kind of working. I really actually like sitting here and looking out into the room. I also kind of feel like having this element and jut out from the wall eliminates that everything pushed up against the wall kind of feel that we had going on before. But yeah, obviously the sofa can't be here. The table in the middle is too big. The back of the desk is unfinished, so we'd have to come up with a solution for that. Also, there's this kind of weird area behind me that I don't necessarily know what to do with. But all in all, I think I'm gonna try to plug everything in and leave it like this for now to get a sense of how this will feel. One of the big growth moments that I've arrived at after years of doing this in my house is trying something for a period and seeing how it works before you fully commit to it. I think that if I had set up my monitor here and made myself face the wall while I edited before we made this whole setup, then I probably wouldn't have done it this way to start with, but it is what it is now. So I think before we try to problem solve everything else, I'm gonna leave this like this for a while and see how we feel about it because this already feels better. And in case you were wondering, the monitor is on a mount that it can pull out an angle, so I would be able to sit here with two screens also without having to actually face in toward that screen. So I think this could work. At this point, nothing is precious. The most important thing is that the room is functional. So if this is what's gonna make me wanna sit here and edit in this room, then we gotta at least give it a try. Also, a bonus element of this layout that I like is that it feels very cinematic. I mean, we are making a YouTube channel here. I was watching this reel on Instagram the other day that was talking about how set dressers for Hollywood will place a lot of clutter within a shot at different depths to make a shot read more cinematic and less flat. And something about the desk jutting out and the lamp sitting on the desk, something about that is adding depth and angles and making the shot more interesting. So that doesn't hurt either. Speaking of this sofa, I love this mid-century vinyl sofa. I got this at the REISSUED for $40, which is the steal of the century. It's so unique, I've never seen one like it. So even though it doesn't really work here in the window, and I'm coming to terms with that, I just love it and I can't bear to part with it. So I'm hoping to find a place for it somewhere else. Let me know if you have any ideas. In any case, this baby is vinyl and it has some cracking along the seat that's been gradually kind of getting worse for a while. And in the spirit of tying up loose ends here at the end of the year, I think we should go ahead and repair this so at the very least it doesn't get any worse. So I'm pulling out this vinyl repair kit. I've never done a repair on vinyl before, so I don't know what I'm doing here, but I read the instructions and we're gonna give this a go. First, it said to clean the areas that we want to repair with rubbing alcohol, so I clean those with rubbing alcohol. Then we need to mix up a color to match this kind of blue-green shade. So I go in with a lot of blue, a little bit of yellow, and just a tiny bit of black. Again, I'm kind of guessing here, and honestly, my guess was pretty good because the color looked pretty spot on the first try. The instructions said that I didn't need to go in with any kind of fabric patch or anything if the gaps were less than 1/4 inch, which these are. So I just went ahead and started painting this into the cracks first with one of the brushes that came with the kit, and then going in with the little spatula that came with the kit to try to do more of a whole fill kind of situation. And once I felt like I got kind of enough in the crack, I went along the edges with a damp paper towel to kind of blend things out. Whenever I do a repair like this on anything, I always try to kind of blend out the edges, so if the color match isn't perfect, you're not gonna get a hard line or like a built up raised edge. And this appeared to work decently well here. The instructions said to apply multiple thin layers, and I think I applied like maybe 6 or 7 layers here. It would always look really smooth on top, and then I would go back a few minutes later after it had dried and it just would kind of sink back back in again. As I went, I kind of noticed that the color was looking a little bit dark. This was a perfect color match when it was wet, but it ended up drying down a bit darker. So I mixed the shade a bit lighter to try to counteract that, which worked okay. Ultimately, I got this filled as best I could and then went in with an even lighter matte to try to recreate the kind of mottled color and finish on this pleather originally. And I think I did decently well with matching the color and the finish until I saw this on camera and it looked really bad. I don't know, I think I did the best I could with this one, but I wasn't able to really get those gaps to close. So if nothing else, you just see kind of the texture of where the gap used to be. If you have any tips on executing a repair like this better than I did, please let me know down in the comments. At this point, I'm okay with how this worked because it is sealing up the crack and preventing this from getting any bigger, but I would have liked if this looked a little better because I love this piece so much, but hey, I did the best I could. So with a new can of spray foam insulation, I can go in and spray that all along the top inside the fireplace. My goal here is to cover up all of that paper insulation stuff so that this all looks uniform, and I want to make sure that I'm filling this enough so that I can carve it away to create kind of a flat surface along the back so that I can mimic the look of what I think the original brick looked like. So in order to achieve this buildup, I did 2 passes. The first one just to kind of fill in all the cracks. Then I let that dry to touch for about 30 minutes, and then I went in with another layer to kind of build it up even more. So now, while that's fully curing, let's grout the tile. We're multitasking a lot today. Originally, I had been planning to go in with a lighter grout similar to what I used in the bedroom. However, when looking at the tile, I noticed that the darker tiles were just slightly smaller than the white tiles. So I felt like going in with the dark charcoal grout would be better to kind of build out the darker tiles to match the scale of the lighter tiles, if that makes sense. So I'm using the same charcoal grout that I used in all of my bathrooms, and I think it worked really well here. I apply it with a spatula and a float to get it into all those little grooves, scrape off the excess on the diagonal so that it stays in the grooves but comes off the surface of the tiles. And then after that has between 15 and 30 minutes to set, I go in with a wet sponge and wipe off all of the excess multiple times so that the front of the tile is smooth and free of grout. Now the bottom of the mantle was looking a little bit ratty and there was a gap, so we went in with this little trim that we pulled from somewhere else in the house. I think this might have been used as a door jamb. I had gone in the past with the heat gun to strip all the paint off, but as usual, there's just a little bit remaining here, so I'm going in with sandpaper to remove all of that remaining paint and get this to as natural of a finish as possible. With this mantle, there is no stain on this, it's just wax, so I really want to get this stripped down so that it feels like the natural wood. Then my dad can finish up the mitered cuts on these and nail them into place around the base of each side of the mantle. Little details like this go a long way to making things feel more complete, and I love to pull things from the house for this purpose so it feels like old materials going together rather than a mix of old that may not match up. Okay, so now the foam insulation is expanded, it is dry, and we are ready to carve it down. Now, I tried a couple of things off camera here with just like a utility blade and a scraper, and I was finding it hard to get the foam to cut without tearing or just pulling out, which would totally defeat the point of this. We want to get that smooth finish. So I ended up pulling out this electric turkey cutter thing that I have. I've used this to cut upholstery foam before, so we're gonna give this a try here. My strategy was to try to hold it flush with the surface of the bricks, which was on a slight diagonal, and try to cut along that diagonal. I found it was better to kind of work shallow and then gradually go deep, cutting off little bits at a time. As I went, I noticed that I didn't really get the insulation as full in there as I wanted to. There were a lot of holes. However, the brick here that we're trying to match is super crumbly, so it kind of tracks that there wouldn't be a perfect smooth front of the brick. So I think this is gonna work out just fine. Once I got things pretty flat on the back and sides and top, I started to go in and carve out some bricks here. I was trying to kind of mimic the placement of some of the lower rows and how I placed these. Essentially, I just cut 2 parallel lines here and then went in kind of on an angle to chip that section out. And this worked surprisingly well and started to look really convincing as brick. One of the challenging elements of all of my DIYs lately is that it gets dark here at like 5. I'm used to working during the summer when it stays light until almost 9 p.m. And so I'm really struggling to get everything done in the time that I want, keeping natural light. So I lost the light here and had to switch gears back to cleaning up and decluttering the room. Now, I'm aware that I have a lot of stuff and I probably do need to clear out some stuff. However, I am taking advantage of the new storage in the living room. We installed that big giant wall of built-ins and a lot of that storage right now is just empty, a lot of the cabinets and drawers and things. So I'm taking this opportunity to store away some things from this room, at least temporarily in that room to get them out of the way, because if we have the storage, why not use it? And finally, I think this might be the first time this year that this glass table in the studio has been clean, so I had to document it for you. I really love having a glass table in this room because there's glue and paint and all kinds of things on this, and I was able just to go in with the razor blade and scrape those right off, looking good as new. I'm keeping that in mind as we redesign a table for this space. This glass top is definitely too big for the room, but it's so functional, so I'm not sure what to do. Alright, final steps on the fireplace. I'm gonna go in and paint this foam. I'm starting in with the black craft paint here. Now, I decided to go with craft paint for a couple of reasons. First, it's cheap and it takes a surprising amount of paint to paint this foam because the foam wants to soak the paint up and because you have to get a lot of paint on there to get into all of the cracks and crevices. Additionally, I find that this paint dries more matte than a lot of paints that I have. I think that matte finish is gonna make this feel a lot more brick-like. I think a chalk paint could work well for this too if you have that on hand. After I got the black base coat on there, I watered down my black paint and kind of brushed that over just the bricks below that to again kind of blend out the edges like I did on the sofa. I could go in and paint all of the bricks here black, but 1, that would take forever. 2, this is super sandy and crumbly, so I found when I brushed over it, it just wanted to kind of crumble apart, so we're gonna leave that as is. But also, I'm always trying to find a balance between maintaining the old look of something and making it feel put together. I don't love giving something a completely fresh look because it doesn't feel like it's always been that way. And I like how kind of uneven and natural this brick looks. So we're trying to create a blend here between that natural look up into our darker bricks. In order to help with that blend, I'm going in with some orange and burnt umber and brown acrylics over the top as well to kind of give my new bricks some highlights and kind of merge them even more with the existing bricks. I'm adding a black heat resistant paint to the outside of the metal grate. I'm mostly doing this to give it a uniform look that ties all the way into those little tiles that we added at the bottom to give the effect that the grate goes all the way to the floor, but also because I want this fireplace to tie into the other rooms, and both the bedroom and the living room fireplaces have this paint. And as a final step, I add some tinted paste wax to the wood pieces at the bottom of the mantle. This is the same finish that I put on the rest of the mantle. The color doesn't quite match yet. It looks a little bit weird, but I think that this wood will oxidize to match the rest of the wood. In my experience, wood does tend to kind of darken up a little bit when it's exposed to sunlight, and this is freshly exposed to sunlight with the paint removed. So I think this should darken up and blend with everything else eventually. Alright everybody, I think that we are done. Now this room is far from finished. We still need to paint the floor. We have a lot of things to figure out with the table and the layout and what we're doing with the desk. However, I am going to give you a little before and after here, if nothing else to remind you of the power of putting stuff away and not having it out everywhere, but also to remind you that not every makeover has to be a giant reveal before and after. Small changes add up, and also that this stage in the design process can be super critical. Yes, we're going into finishing everything off, but we want to make sure that all all the pieces are lined up to make that happen so that the room is actually usable and functional and a space that I want to work in. So I'm really excited about the new desk configuration. I've been loving that so far. I also am very excited. I think this is the first time this year that I can make a full lap around the room without stepping on something. So that's something to be celebrated. And finally, I was finding last night as I was in this room getting a little bit of work done, I kind of felt like I've rediscovered a bit of the magic of this room. I remember why I liked spending time in this room and the things about it that I love. It feels like a space with creativity and possibility, but it's also kind of a warm hug with all these beautiful objects and warm wood tones. It's definitely a little bit magical, and I can't wait to get started working in here again. Now, before you go, I have a couple of questions for you about the space while I have you here. Firstly, you may have noticed this little cabinet that's over in the corner. I mentioned in my living room video that we got this piece in the trash at the REISSUED. It's missing a door and the other door fell off, but I think this works super well here, and we had to put this here to house the insert for my TV because there was nowhere else that it could go. So this piece needs to live here. I like how it looks here, but it's missing its doors, and so I'm not really sure how to finish this off. So if you have any ideas about new doors for this, maybe no doors at all and just open shelving, I'm not sure really what I want to do. Let me know if you have any ideas. Also, I'm opening it up to any layout ideas in general. Again, really nothing is precious at this point. I want the space to be the most functional thing possible. So if you feel like you have a solution, raise your hand in the comments and please let me know. And finally, I'm really loving this piece of art over the fireplace. I know this is not for everybody, but this is one of my first pieces of art that I thrifted at a Goodwill for $5 with my mom circa like 2013, 2014, I think. And this has been such an inspiration to me, so I feel like this is an appropriate place for it to go, but I'm not really sure that it works with the colors of my house, but I think that's okay. But I really want to get a frame on this. I'm thinking something that's like chunky and wood, but maybe something gold, like the one that's sitting behind it is fine. Let me know what you think about this piece in this room and how I should frame it. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this little studio mini makeover journey. If you enjoyed this process and want to see the final reveal on the space coming next year, be sure that you're subscribed, hit the like button, hype this video, all the things. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon.